according to the Rambam, Sfiras Omer is not the countdown to the giving of the Torah from the Exodus. Why? Well, the first is otherwise the mitzvah would have been count from the Exodus, and you should count from that day, count a certain amount of time until you get to the next holiday. But instead, we're counting from the day after Passover. And the day after Passover, not because the day after Passover, it says Miyom Aviyachem, this particular korban. And it's connecting. And when you get to the count, it says you should make a festival and bring a new korban on that day. So the counting of the Omer, which is referring to barley grains, connects the crop, the sacrifice that marks the beginning of the barley crop with the beginning of the wheat crop. And the barley crop is a primitive sacrifice. Remember, because I'll consider barley animal food. And we're working up to wheat, which is leavened for proper human food. That is, the Omer connects the agricultural aspects of these two holidays, but it doesn't connect the Exodus with the giving of Torah. Unlike, let's say, what we have now. The problem is, this is supposed to be Yom HaBikurim and Chag HaBikurim, and we don't have that anymore. So instead, we changed the whole nature of Shavuot. You look in the Gemara and Megillah, what was the Torah reading for Shavuot back in the day? The first day was taken from Parshas Emor, which describes this korban of what you're supposed to do, the Bikurim, the Lechem Bikurim of Shavuot. It's only later, when we became detached from this agricultural aspect of the sacrifices and the nature of the holiday of Shavuot, the weeks, that we focused more on the giving of the Torah, which didn't even necessarily happen on this holiday, as we see, the scene. So, what? Yeah. Yes. And you can see that apparently there's mitzvahot and also in older ones. Remember the minhag that existed before the Crusades, whereby they don't even mention Matan Torah on Shavuot. It was just Chag HaShavuot Hazeh or Yom HaBikurim Hazeh. That's the way it used to be. And we've also changed the Torah reading to reflect this whole the centrality of Kabbalah Torah on this day. We now read a Torah portion different from the one they read in Temple time and even post Temple time. So we focus on this, and that's why, in the absence, what's the mitzvah of the day? The mitzvah of the day. Well, it's supposed to be, yeah, I would think so. And Bikurim, first fruits, etc. And the Chagiga and Riyah, but now it's become focusing on Torah study, which, like I said, I'm not so opposed. It's a good thing if you're going to spend. How many times do you get people to spend even 3 hours straight studying Torah? Thank God. And let's say in the Chovevei Tzion Shul, they do this all the time. What? There's no mitzvot? I think there are. Thank God. So yeah, there are. There's Chagiga and Riyah and Aliyah L'Regel and Simcha. These are all important mitzvahs that we put in the back seat. But God willing, I look forward to the day when they will once again attain their centrality as they were. And we even read about this in the Torah. But giving the Torah is also a good thing. It's good to celebrate this. Where were we? It says here that we got to the part where that how the Kohen would wave these things, and we also talked about how they'd have to leaven these breads. Normally, they wouldn't leaven any of the menachos, right? Forbidden to offer them. These aren't going to be burned on the altar, so it's not such a problem. But still, normally that which was eaten in the temple by the Kohanim was unleavened. All the menachos have to been prepared a certain way that even though there's many different ways to make it, it still ended up having to be matzah, which, by the way, shows, and there are people who now practice these things, there's many different ways to make matzah. And a lot of these menachos, as they're described, are halachli matzah, but not lechem oni. And there is a nafkamina. Why are they not lechem oni? They're matzah, because they have oil in them. So they're matzah shira, basically. So we wouldn't, you couldn't say, well, I read the Rambam's Hilchos Meiser Korbanos, and they know how to make 5 different types of menachos. 2 ways of frying and 2 ways of baking, and I'll use that on Passover. Yes, you could have many different types of matzah. There are many different ways to bake a matzah. There are many different ways to bake a matzah, but you should not be using oil if you want to use it for the first night of Passover, because then it would be matzah shira according to many opinions, and you wouldn't have the lechmoni aspect. Well, no, because non-Passover. So it used to be, even later than Rashi times. Rashi was the one who didn't like matzah made with eggs. He had a problem with egg matzah specifically. That's only one type. Rambam says use eggs. It's not even matzah shira. You have to use real oil and wine and things like that. Eggs, it's like using apple juice. He makes a distinction. Some what we would call matzah shira. But besides that, Rambam's Rashi's own grandchildren were even recommending that people eat matzah shira. That's Rabbi Tom's solution. Erev Shabbos. Shabbos is Erev Pesach. What are you going to eat for Shabbos in the afternoon? Rabbi Tom says, crack out the Strites egg matzahs, the ones made with eggs and apple juice, or wine and apple juice, as it may be. And Rashi didn't like egg matzah. There's a deference to Rashi, don't eat any matzah shira. That's very questionable, halachically speaking. Why? How that became such a big chumrah that, first of all, you know that eggs and flour don't leaven together. It just sometimes it gets puffy if you beat the eggs and then bake it. But besides, why would that then be transferred to any form of matzah that has anything but water in it? It doesn't seem to fit. Rabbi Rabinovich's son told me that technically speaking, if you take proper flour for making matzah and you mix it with juice that you squeezed yourself, to which you did not add any water, undiluted fruit juice, then you can technically make that and eat that on Passover. It's not a problem. Problem is sometimes they dilute it. What's the problem with diluting the juice, by the way? Chazal said if you have fruit juice and you dilute it with water, then it could become chametz. Use real fruit juice, it does not become chametz. So like Rabbi Blumenkrantz pointed out, the pH is low. When it's acidic enough, it doesn't allow leavening to happen. Wait a minute. I looked on the chart. Orange juice is more acidic than grape juice and apple juice, right? True. Each fruit juice and pomegranate juice has its own pH also. So how much water does it take to raise the pH? And really, it would depend on the juice, it would depend on that crop, it depends on how much water you put in there. There's a certain pH. But most of us don't have the ability to measure pH in the kitchen. So you assume juice, as it comes out, even the less acidic juices. Grape juice is, I think, the least acidic, even though it is acidic. You take grape juice or even milk. Milk is the result. Milk is it's still acidic. It's like a 6. But either way, any one of these guys that you dilute, you raise the pH and it approaches 7. It doesn't get to 7. It can't go past the 7 and become basic. But it's kind of hard to say how much water each time it takes to raise this liquid's pH beyond that which would no longer allow leavening to happen. So we just say you added water, now you have to worry that it'll become chametz. And if you use the pure fruit juice or just the oil, it won't. The problem with oil, it's not about pH. Oil might be neutral, but oil doesn't allow for leavening because it just doesn't have, it doesn't interact with the enzymes the same way. Okay, so we're in halacha. We're in halacha chet yud gimel, I think it was. Okay, so there was an issue we brought up yesterday 2 days ago, that they're supposed to bring 2 breads with these 2 lambs. That's what the special sacrifice on Shavuot is. And then it mentions, let's say you had 4 breads, they made spares. So how do you know which 2 count as the sacrifice? The answer is he decides there and then and there. The Kohen who's, processing it makes this decision. And he says here, shachat arba akvasim al shtei chalot. Let's say for whatever reason, they doubled the amount of lambs. They're supposed to have 2 lambs. Oh, they're 4. Slaughtered 4 lambs upon these 2 loaves. I mean, literally on them means next to them. It's part of the sacrifice. Moshnech shnai mehem. He draws 2 of them closer. There's a rekto man shelo lishman. And he throws their blood on the altar as a korban, but not lishmav, not l'shem this particular korban that is brought on Shavuot, but stam, a burnt offering of a sheep. And the other 2 sheep he will waive as kosher for this sacrifice. That's how you eliminate them. That's just where they get these 2 other lambs here. They didn't know that what's prescribed is just 2 lambs and not 4 lambs. Okay. Question: how often did this happen that the sages actually had to address this particular case? You need 2 chalot. You can't say I'll just have 1. If you don't have 1, so you can't bring the other. And the 2 kvasim makvin zetzeh means if you don't have 2 lambs, you can't say, well, we'll just use 1. Lama davar domesh. Normally, any other korban tzibur, let's say Musa for Rosh Chodesh, you need 2 lambs today, plus another 7 lambs for Rosh Chodesh, and 2 bulls and 1 ram and a he-goat for a sin offering. That's a lot. Let's say they only have some of those animals. They only have 1 bull, and they don't have the ram. but they have 8 lambs. So you know what? One lamb in the morning, one lamb in the afternoon, and 6 lambs for the musaf instead of 7. You give what you can. They're not ma'aktin. But in this case, these 2 lambs that are supposed to be brought in Shavuot, he has to make sure to have both of them. Meit echad b'shteihem, or barach, o na'aseh treifa. One of them died. One of them escaped. Imagine that. How do lambs tend to do that? You know, a lamb is pretty docile. It doesn't really escape. But somehow it got out of there. O na'aseh treifa. It is a treifa. Treifa means that it sustained some sort of blemish or wound that would have killed it. How do they know it's a treifa? There's sometimes they can see it. They see something happen to it. I don't know, got attacked by a wolf, or after they slaughtered it, they found that there's something inside there. It had been eating I don't know, cufflinks or something like that. Cufflinks, you know, that's the old joke. Okay, Bikach zug lashini. So he has to get a new partner, a new match for the surviving sheep. Yeah, another one because you need 2 of them. Shachad echad lishmo. And if he slaughtered one lishmo for the right purpose, he kach lo zug. So that's just one. He did one, so the second one's ma'aked. Get it a match. Find another sheep in order to process with it. I also questioned that, like, how often did this happen that it had to be addressed specifically? You think with all the crowds and all the kohanim there that this sheep got away? Okay, go on. Shtei alechem me'akvin et hakvasim. And also you need 2 breads in order to bring these 2 lambs. But if you don't have these 2 sheep, so that doesn't stop the bread from being brought. Okay, so what's more important? Apparently it's the bread. Okay? If you don't have the bread, so don't bring the sheep, because the only reason they're coming is because of this bread. That's the ikr. Remember, Shavuot, we're counting up for the week crop. But if you have the bread and no sheep, so go ahead with it. Once they've been waved together, the breads have been waved with these lambs. Remember, it seems that you pick up both lambs at the same time. Once that waving process happened, now they're all connected. So if the bread goes, also that's it. The bread, so the kvasim can't. Nothing happens to them. Yovduak kvasim. What does it usually mean? They go lost. Can't use it for sacrifice now. And if you lose these 2 sheep, now that the waving has been done, so the bread's a goner. So find 2 new breads and 2 new kvasim, which means that this is probably the reason why they had 4 breads. Right? You have 2 breads they're going to use l'chachila, and they count with their sheep. And then he did this process of waving them, and something happened to the sheep now, so that ruined the bread. So now they'll take the 2 other breads and bring 2 other sheep. Like I said, I have a hard time imagining how this happened, but apparently it did happen. Next halacha. Let's say you have shtei alechem and they don't have the lambs for whatever reason. Bread present, no lambs. Unifu. So let them wave them. V'ta'avor tzuratan. And don't let the kohanim eat them. Instead, let them spoil. Let's leave the breads out until they go bad. I guess until they get moldy, fall apart, whatever it is. V'yetze'u leveda srifa, and then they should be taken out to the place of srifa. All the sacrificial foods that had not ended up being eaten were taken out to a place beyond the temple and burned. Gezerah shema yimatze'u kvasim l'shana haba. Yimtze'u kvasim l'shana haba. There's a gzera, lest they find lambs the next year. V'yavu lechem v'lo kvasim, because they'll think that they could bring lechem without kvasim stock. In this case, they couldn't do it, so they brought the bread. But if they would eat the bread, people would think that this is l'chachila. You could bring bread and no animals. This, by the way, is a rejoinder, I think, to the idea. They did find, they published recently ideas from Rav Kook. Rav Kook imagined that eventually they would, of course, people would be vegetarians. That's Rav Kook's idea. It's not that it's halacha. It's not that Rav Kook is the final word on this, but it was a pretty prominent position he took. And he imagined a world without animal sacrifice, and he couldn't find a way around the Korban Pesach, because the Korban Pesach, you have to eat, it's different from all the other sacrifices. In this case, also, we see here, it's trying to insist, no, don't think that you could have, let's say, a temple that only has vegetable sacrifice. And what are the vegetable sacrifices? Incense is basically vegetable based. Yeah, all the menachos and the sachim, and I guess the inorganic sacrifice, all the salt you put in is inorganic, and so is the water. There's a sacrifice of water, and the wood. Wood is put on the altar, frankincense with the mincha, oil. So those korbanos will stand, and there will be a way that eventually the sages of the future, Chazal of the future, if you will. I shouldn't say no. We should say, how would you say the future? What's the equivalent of Zechronim Livracha? Future tense. Well, yeah, because Chachamim Shlita. No, yeah, whatever it is, Neiram Yair. Okay, the sages Neiram Yair will find a way around this. And I think Rambam is saying, don't find a way around this. You can't say that we'll just stick to Stei Lechem. You have to bring the sheep if you can. Don't try to darshan this away. Yeah, at least that's the way I understood it. What about that bull and the 2 rams and the 7 sheep and the goat that are not the musaf? These are just an extra korbanos described in Vayikra along with the Stei Lechem. They are brought today because of the Shtei Halechem. They're not stam musaf. Einon ma'akvinas alechem. They don't hold back the lechem. If you don't have them, you still bring these 2 breads. V'lo halechem ma'akvon. And the lack of bread won't stop them. You still have to bring these korbanos. Interesting. Shtei parim shel musaf hayom ufar haba b'glach halechem einon ma'akvin zeh et zeh. And then you look at this, you say, wait a minute. In Parshas Pinchas, the musaf is 2 bulls. And here in Emor, it says that brought with the lechem is 1 bull. Total of 3 bulls. Einon makvin zeh et zeh. You only have one or the other, 2 out of 3. So say, I guess, 2 bulls. You need 3. Say either 2 are for the korban musaf, or 1 is the musaf and 1 is for the shtei halechem. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. You have to bring as much as you can, and the lack of 1 or 2 doesn't stop the 3rd one from being offered. Ayal shel musaf hayom, that 1 ram that's in the musaf in Parshas Pinchas, Ushnei elim haba'im biglal lechem, and the 2 rams mentioned in Emor that come with this bread, einon makvin zeh et zeh. Same din. You have to bring 3 rams total. Doesn't matter if you have just 1 or 2. You still have to bring them. Decide which korban it's going toward, but you still have to do whatever you can. Shivach vasim shel musaf hayom, the 7 lambs that are the musaf mentioned in Parshas Pinchas, v'shivach vasim haba'im biglal halechem, and the 7 other lambs that are brought, mentioned in Parshas Emor and brought because of this bread, einon makvin zeh et zeh, v'im nishchatu kulan makvin zeh et zeh. But once they're slaughtered, you manage to get them slaughtered as a group. They're slaughtered as a group, and then the psul happens in one of them after the slaughtering. That is makiv. They can't hold each other back. Let's finish this. Now the Rambam brought up this idea because this is kind of interesting. This day is unique in the Torah because it seems to have a double musaf. Like I said, that which is described in Pinchas and that which is described in Parshas Emor. And now we have these rules that the sages gave us. What holds back the other one? How contingent are they on each other? And now he's going to get into general rules that are good to remember all year round. Hatmidin einon ma'akvined amusafim. Tmidim, don't stop back. Don't stop the musafim. What does that mean? For whatever reason, let's say in the morning on Shabbos, they didn't have a lamb. So there was no korban tamid of Shabbos. But then they get 2 lambs around Musaf time. So those lambs are going to go to Musaf. You're going to say, wait a minute, maybe we should hold on to one of these lambs. We'll need it for Mincha. Total korban on Shabbos is just 4 lambs. 1 in the morning, 2 in the middle of the day is Musaf, and 1 in the afternoon. So whatever you can. Tmidim ena makvin musafim. The fact that you lack tmidim doesn't stop the musafim from being bought. V'lo musafim makvin tmidim. And the musaf can't stop the tmidim. Sometimes you could have this, that you just don't have lamb. So there will be no tamid in the morning, no tamid in the afternoon. But you have rams and bulls, and the musaf calls for some rams and some bulls. Sometimes it's 2 bulls and 1 ram. Sometimes just 1 bull, 1 ram. So bring those. There was no tamid, no lambs for the tamid, but you bring what you can. V'lo musafim ma'akvin zeh et zeh. V'lo minyan ha'olot kulan me'akev. Pieces of the musaf don't stop each other, and also musaf of this. Let's say Rosh Chodesh, and it's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, so you have to do a double musaf, right? It's basically the same thing. What's the difference between Rosh Chodesh's musaf and Rosh Hashanah's musaf? They're the same thing except for 1 bull. The Rosh Hashanah musaf is 1 bull, and on Rosh Chodesh it's 2 bulls. Everything else is the same. It's basically just double. So whatever you can, the number of these animals doesn't really matter. It's not ma'akev in this case if you only have some. you bring what you can, and you can't bring what you can't bring. Avaris mano batel korbano. How would this happen, by the way? I don't know. I guess there's an animal shortage or there's shortage of funds. He said that this brought from the Lishka, the donations they got from the half shekels. What they ran out of money, so they have to take from a different fund for that. And sometimes the contribution comes, I guess, later than they were expecting. And there's other examples. The Rambam says, Ketzad, Harei shelo matzu ela shisha kvasim. Time for Musaf. Musaf is normally has 7 lambs. On Sukkot, it's even more, 14 lambs. So what do? You have 6 lambs. Makrivin shisha. So we'll bring 6 lambs. Afilu lo matzu el echad makrivin oto. The Musaf calls for 7 lambs, or 2 lambs, let's say on Shabbos. You have 1 lamb, bring that, good enough. Whether we're talking about Musaf for Rosh Chodesh, or the Moadot, that's the holidays, or Shabbos. And not only that, if we lack something today in the Musaf for whatever reason, and then you get it tomorrow, there's no makeups. You can't say, we'll bring it the next Yontif. This is one essential difference between what stands in the place of the sacrifices today. Actually, we learn their halachas from the sacrifices. Davening. When do we daven? It's supposed to correspond with when basically they offered the sacrifice in the temple. So you miss Shachris for whatever reason. What do you got to do? Double up Mincha at Mincha time. So at Mincha times, there's a large window to daven Mincha, but you have to double up Mincha. And you can't just double up Mariv. By the time you get to Mariv, you missed it. Now you don't have a Tashlumin. But Korbanos don't have Tashlumin. Very strange. This is an essential difference between the prayers and the Korbanos. Okay. Rambam continues here. You mentioned this. Ve'en chayvin lakriv hasha'ar l'machar u'lemedacher ela kol korban tzibur she'avar zmano batel korbano. Any korban tzibur, you missed it. So that's it. Batel korbano. There's no makeups. Kind of strange that that doesn't happen, but that's how Chazal assumed. And the Torah also doesn't have any claim to this. My question is, so why did the sages tell us to, at least the next prayer time, make up the prayer that we missed? Why do we have Tashlumin for Shmon Esrei? For Kriyas Shema, there's no Tashlumin, by the way. It's only Shmon Esrei. So what's the essential reason for such a thing? Well, yeah. So we do such things. So the question is why? Well, what are we supposed to be learning then? And not only that, it's kind of strange. Let's say you missed Mincha Erev Shabbos. So what's Tashlumin? So it's Mariv of Shabbos. And it's not even the same thing. So you're davening, you missed Mincha, so you daven Shabbos twice. Gets even stranger. Did you know a person misses Mincha? He misses Mincha on, let's say Sunday. Sunday was Rosh Chodesh. So he missed Mincha on Sunday. So he's supposed to say Ya'alav Yavo. He didn't miss Mincha. He just neglected to say Ya'alav Yavo. He davened. He started Shemon Esrei 5 minutes before sundown. And it takes him exactly 5 minutes. And then showing he just forgets, oh man, I left out Ya'alav Yavo. So he has not discharged his obligation to daven Mincha on Sunday. And now the sun's gone down. The stars are coming out. It's now Monday, halachically Monday. So he has to make up for the fact that he basically missed Mincha. So he'll daven Mariv twice. But the Mariv he's now davening twice in order to make up for, there's no Ya'alav Yavo. So the solution, basically his prayer on Rosh Chodesh was deficient because he missed the specific part of the prayer that makes it Rosh Chodesh. And he's going to make up for that by offering a prayer that doesn't have Ya'alav Yavo anyways. And the Chen Halo, he missed his prayer on Shabbos, Mincha on Shabbos, so he's going to daven a double Mariv on Motzei Shabbos. Doesn't fit. Obviously, the connection between the Korbanos and the personal prayer is not exactly the same thing. It cannot be. So we'll have to suggest something, that the point of prayer is the person makes his requests. Make his request because it's proper that every person who can should worship God the right way. First, acknowledge God. First, you have to know that He is the Creator, and it is through His power that everything exists, and it's only contingent upon His will alone. And then one has to realize that one is entirely at His mercy. It is only because of God's will that we have everything we have, and therefore it's proper that one request of God. It's not that God will not give if you don't request, or that God is demanding a request, or that God needs our thanks. He certainly does not. It's about us. And this is something that we learned from Rav Kook, that prayer is about transforming the individual. It's about building a person to understand what he needs to understand. It's a consciousness. The person has to be God conscious. So it's not sufficient to say Shema Yisrael. That's almost like an introduction, right? We say Shema Yisrael before we daven. You first have to acknowledge God. But once you have acknowledged him and you know your role, it is only proper, like we teach children. You have to ask for something, you have to request, and you have to say thank you. And that is the structure of the prayer. First, praise God, acknowledge his mastery and his greatness, and then make your personal requests. You're going to say, wait a minute, but I didn't request anything on Shabbos. On a weekday, on Friday, I say Baruch Aleinu and everything else. And I ask for Slicha and Mechila and Refuah. And on Shabbos, I'm not supposed to be requesting such things. And it turns out on Shabbos, no, you make similar requests, but in a different form. Sabeinu mituvecha, v'samchenu b'shuatecha. Those are the requests you're supposed to make on a day like a Shabbos or a Yom Tov. On a weekday, it's more mundane. You request what you need, and everybody according to his needs. And also, you're supposed to keep in mind those who are ill and those who are less fortunate. But that is what prayer is supposed to be teaching. So if the tzibur is missing a korban, to be honest, like Rav Kook teaches us based on the Rambam, God does not need sacrifice, and it's not that like Shmuel Navi told King Saul. God wants your behavior. He wants you to follow his will. He's not bribed by fat bulls. That's not how it's supposed to work. However, if you missed your time for prayer and you were supposed to give a silent devotion, set your mind to understanding godliness and requesting what you're supposed to request and put yourself in front of him and acknowledge that is all from him and is only him, so you are missing something and you have to make that up. That is the difference over here. But, yeah. Yeah. So you'll have to give a second Shemona Esrei, but it will be without Ya'aleh V'Yavo because now it's not Rosh Chodesh. Yeah. So you lost it. You lost that mincha. Now you have to make it up, and now you're going to daven bar without Ya'aleh V'Yavo. Yeah.
But you have a situation where Rosh Chodesh on Friday.
Yeah.
That night is Yom Tov.
Yeah. Well, how's that happen?
I don't know. I'm asking.
There's no such thing. There's no yontif that's on the second day of the month. So
then you would have no.
yeah, but not Ya'aleh V'Yavo the same thing. You'd say on this day.
No.
You know, it doesn't happen.
Saying,
But it does happen. There is the example you're thinking about is different Ya'aleh V'Yavo is person misses mincha of the seventh day of Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, when it says Yom Chag Sukkot Hazeh, and the Ya'aleh V'Yavo of the ensuing night is Yom Shmini Atzeres Hazeh, and that's not even Ya'aleh V'Yavo. That's like the essential bracha. So in such a case, he'll be davening two Shmini Atzeres Shmona Esreis of Mariv to make up for the fact that he missed the last mincha of Chag Shavuot. Last halacha. Lo matzu ela shnei chvasim. Let's say they only have. I was talking about this case. You have two lambs in the temple. Im yakrivu otan l'musaf hayom, ein len tamidim l'machar. You bring the musaf today. It means what I mean. But these are the only last two lambs in the temple. Maybe we'll have a tamid for this afternoon, but tomorrow morning we won't have a tamid. Tomorrow afternoon we have a tamid. We use up the lambs. Hareya davar shakul. So if they brought it today for Musaf, they brought it, and tomorrow, we'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow happens. If they made this decision, no, we want to have the tummy tomorrow. Musaf already has 7 lambs, so we'll make the Musaf 5 lambs today, so that we could potentially have 2 more to meet them tomorrow. So that's their discretion. Remember, the Sanhedrin's in charge of the temple. It says, what's the major role of the Sanhedrin? Why is the Sanhedrin sitting at the temple according to the Rambam? To check the Kohanim for Mumin and to see which Kohanim could serve. That's their main job. But also, I guess, it would be the Sanhedrin's decision. They're the ones there, or I guess the base of the Kohanim is also pretty prestigious, and they have this. They could make this essential decision. So, wish everybody happy Yom Tov. We should merit to see the reinstitution of the sacrificial service this very day, and Aliyah Regel on Friday. See you there.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement. Please email us at office@machonshilo.org.